So Senator Kaine said in this hearing that he found it a radical and dangerous notion that you would say our rights came from God and not from government. I just walked into the hearing as he was saying that, and I almost fell out of my chair. Because that radical and dangerous notion, in his words, is literally the founding principle upon which the United States of America was created. And if you do not believe me, and you made reference to this, Mr. Barnes, then you can believe perhaps the most prominent Virginian to ever serve, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator, not by government, not by the Democratic National Committee, but by God, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I have to say it is stunning to me that the principle that God has given us natural rights is now deemed by Democrats some radical and dangerous notion. Mr. Jefferson was right when he wrote those words.
Mr. Barnes, I was struck by your opening comments, and I asked to get a copy of them so I could read them and make sure I quoted them correctly. You state, and this is a quote from Secretary Rubio, "Our rights come from God, our Creator, not from our laws, not from our governments." I find that very, very troubling. I'm a devout person. I was a missionary in Honduras. We've got other devout folks in this room, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, American. The notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government, but come from the Creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. It's a theocratic regime that bases its rule on Shia law and targets Sunnis, Baha'is, Jews, Christians, and other religious minorities. And they do it because they believe that they understand what natural rights are from their Creator. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our governments is extremely troubling. I think the motto over the Supreme Court is equal justice under law. The oath that you and I take, pledge to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, not arbitrarily defined natural rights. I'm a strong believer in natural rights, but I have a feeling if we were to have a debate about natural rights in the room and put people around the table with different religious traditions, there would be some significant differences in the definitions of those natural rights. You go on to say, "I believe our country and our government is the best in the world, and our strength comes from our enduring values." I believe that. But then you say, and you got to choose what to say in your opening testimony, "These values aren't an endless list of, quote, rights." You put the quote around that to kind of demean the notion of rights that people create and change and form to meet their own needs or desires. These values aren't identity politics. They're the historic natural rights that we have as individuals pursuing life, liberty, and happiness in the world. Pursuing life, liberty, and happiness. The State Department's Human Rights Report has just struck out all references to the rights of LGBTQ people in countries and the way countries treat LGBTQ people. I mean, do they have a right to liberty? Do they have a right to life? Do they have a right to happiness? Senator Murphy pointed out that the Human Rights Report has taken out information about freedom of association, about freedom of expression, about exploitation of children, about prison conditions. These were all part of the human rights reports that have been done for years by the State Department. I think these are things that are connected to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They've now all been removed from the State Department's annual human rights report. And the notion that, well, we wanted to make it shorter or more readable just doesn't pass the laugh test with me and many others on this committee. I'm not really going to ask you about your testimony because I believe you offered that in a very sincere way, and I don't want to try to change your opinion on something you sincerely believe. But the notion that our rights do not come from our laws or our government should make people very, very nervous. Because people of any religious tradition or none are entitled to the equal protection of the laws under the 14th Amendment. It shouldn't matter what their religious background is, what they think about God or the Creator, what their church affiliation is. You are entitled in this country, every person, to the equal protection of the laws. And so to demean laws and demean governments and suggest that rights don't come from laws and governments, I mean, again, I think there are such things as natural rights, and I try to live in accord with them. But I would never demean the law. We are a nation of laws, not men. Laws, not people. And if we now, after nearly 250 years, suddenly start to demean that or diminish that and suggest, no, it's natural rights as defined by a leader, the leader of Iran or the leader of any nation, that does not create a place of safety or comfort for folks. Mr. Wilcox, I want to just now move to you quickly. Very important position. I think it might be the largest group of employees within the State Department in Virginia. We care deeply about it. All the Marine security guards who guard our embassies train at Quantico. The Foreign Affairs Security Training Center is at Fort Barfoot in Southern Virginia that trains our State Department personnel to keep themselves and their families safe. I'm a little bit worried about the effect of the massive rifts in the State Department on the security mission. Can you tell me how you would try to make sure that your division has the resources it needs to get the job done?
I do apologize. Senator, could you repeat that question, please?
I'm worried about the rifts, the reductions in force, and the effect of those rifts on the security mission of the Department of State. Tell me how you would work to make sure that we have the resources we need to make sure security is job one.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. As you all know, the diplomatic security was not as impacted as the other bureaus. We are the largest bureau, next to consular affairs, perhaps, certainly by budget and number of personnel. It's my understanding that only 2 special agents were RIFed, and they were not in positions within DS at the time. We did have other security engineers and a few other labor categories that were involuntarily RIFed. Once confirmed, I'm going to do a full assessment, as I said in my opening statement, of the resources, the personnel, and the infrastructure that I have to accomplish our 3 primary lines of effort, that being embassy operations, dignitary protection, and law enforcement investigations. There is an impact anytime you conduct a RIF, and we lost 1,300 people on the 13th of July. There's no doubt that that impacts morale, and morale is probably more important than any other component in a paramilitary organization, and there should be no mistake that diplomatic security is a paramilitary organization with an embedded law enforcement agency. So the morale will be first and foremost in my thoughts, and I think that my style of leadership, my candor, my clearly articulating the expectations and the standards that we set for our personnel will help that. There's a lot of other things we can do in terms of the allocation of personnel and make sure they're right-sized against the mission sets. But it will be a key focus of mine, and I will focus keenly on what that impact has been, and I will be candid to the chain of command of what I understand that impact to be.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Kaine.
Mr. Chairman, could I respond to Senator Kaine briefly, if you don't mind?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Briefly.
Take a minute.
Senator, thank you for your comments, and I did want to say my daughter was born in your state. I was educated in your state. My 4th child, that's right, my 4th child will be born in your state, Lord willing, in November, so I'm grateful for the state of Virginia and your leadership of it. I did just want to clarify something. I think when Secretary Rubio made that comment that you referenced, when I make it in my statement, prepared statement as well, I'm certainly speaking of my faith, but I'm also hearkening to the Declaration of Independence, right? Endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. So that is what's animating this desire, this kind of driving back.
How do you square that with removing all the LGBTQ references in the Human
Senator,
Rights Report?
I did want to also talk about, and I mentioned to Senator Murphy the idea of tacking closer to statute in the human rights reports, but I did just want to note that I served for years with Ambassador Brownback in the Religious Freedom Office. I have an incredible respect for other faiths and people who have no faith, and believe we need to be championing those rights. And as you said in your remarks, which I agree with, all are equal, certainly under the law, but these rights that are inherent in human dignity predate the law, is I think what we're getting at when we talk about endowed by the Creator. So thank you for your comments. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Senator Kaine.
Ms. Hildebrand, last week I traveled to El Salvador, Panama, and Mexico to meet with leaders in those countries and tour facilities that are critical to America's national security. China's encroachment across the region is extensive, it's dangerous, and it has to be acknowledged a failure that is bipartisan and stretches back decades. Undoubtedly, the Biden administration's policies in this area were a disaster. I sat down with President Bukele, and he described how Biden officials pushed governments across Central and South America towards the Chinese Communist Party. I traveled around the Panama Canal and saw the vast infrastructure projects the Chinese have been building to seize control of the waterway. As you said during your prepared testimony, the challenge in Costa Rica is acute. Of all the countries in Central America, Costa Rica maintains the longest-standing diplomatic relationships with China, going back to 2007. The CCP has poured billions of dollars into Costa Rica. Nevertheless, Costa Rica remains a critical American ally. It is playing an instrumental role in rebuilding America's alliance system across the hemisphere. There is enormous frustration with CCP coercion across Costa Rica. What policies, in your judgment, can we pursue to help our Costa Rican allies resist Chinese pressure?
Thank you, Senator Cruz, for your question. Chinese expansion into the Western Hemisphere is a threat to national security and to our prosperity. We cannot allow the CCP to control our critical supply chains. Maintaining ties with U.S. and Costa Rica is essential. If confirmed, I'll work with the Costa Rican government, the public and private sectors to counter the CCP influence and support their use of trusted vendors, especially when it comes to implementing the 5G technology.
Thank you. Tell us about how your background has equipped you for this role.
Thank you, Senator, for your question. I think my service on boards and philanthropy as a small business owner and also being a partner in building multiple large businesses equips me for this role. If I am confirmed, I hope that I take my interests in education and prevention programs for high-risk behaviors and the support that we've lended to organizations that assist those that have been trafficked. I hope to make a difference in those areas at a much higher level if I'm confirmed to be the ambassador to Costa Rica.
Thank you. Mr. Barnes, I'd actually like to go back to the exchange you had with Senator Kaine, and I wish Senator Kaine was still here. Senator Kaine and I were elected together 13 years ago. He is a friend. I would actually encourage observers to go back and listen to what Senator Kaine said, because I have to say I think was disturbing and showed much of where today's Democrat Party has gone wrong. So Senator Kaine said in this hearing that he found it a radical and dangerous notion that you would say our rights came from God and not from government. I just walked into the hearing as he was saying that, and I almost fell out of my chair. Because that radical and dangerous notion, in his words, is literally the founding principle upon which the United States of America was created. And if you do not believe me, and you made reference to this, Mr. Barnes, then you can believe perhaps the most prominent Virginian to ever serve, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator, not by government, not by the Democratic National Committee, but by God, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I have to say it is stunning to me that the principle that God has given us natural rights is now deemed by Democrats some radical and dangerous notion. Mr. Jefferson was right when he wrote those words. Government exists to protect those rights. But slavery was not okay when U.S. law allowed it. It was wrong then, it is wrong now, it is always wrong. I guess I would just ask you, your role is going to be very much a role designed to defend human rights across the globe. Do you agree with what I just said? And what do you think about the concept that the founding principles of America are radical and dangerous? What do you think about that particular notion?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate the question. I'll just say, I think one of the ideas behind, we have a new office in DRL, Office of Natural Rights, post the reorganization. I think one of the ideas behind that is you actually have the most consensus behind these natural rights than the kind of, maybe hot button issues of the day. And so we should champion those. As Senator Kaine mentioned, all are created equal. We agree with that. That's in the Declaration of Independence, as is endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights.
Thank you.